This year we've been really blessed with our borlotti beans. We did plan very well, and Julie was very clever in staggering, where she planted the beans and different crops at different times, so that we could have an almost constant supply throughout the summer. And I'm now picking the last of our borlotti beans. They look absolutely beautiful. And today I'm going to be cooking something really special, one of my favorites. And because we are in the autumn, I will be doing a very cozy beans and leek pasta bake with beautiful autumn flavors. And I'm going to also give you a vegetarian version. So this is our last crop. And what I really like about this time of the year, and I'll show you, is the colors. And the colors of the garden and everything will reflect my dish. To some people it might be an absolute pain in the backside, but can you see all of the leaves which are coming down from the tree? Yes, it's a little bit of a job, but in our case we do compost them, and we take pride in making sure that come next year we can use some of the compost which come from nature. But also look how beautiful. This is a leaf from the oak tree, and the colors tell you a story about the season, and absolutely beautiful. And this is, I don't know what the tree is, but if you look at the color shading, isn't that absolutely beautiful?
It's this one, which I can never remember what it is, but there we are. It's enormous.
Enormous. It was very little when we moved in, very, very little, but it has grown like like a triffid, using one of Julie's words, like the rest of the garden.
He's actually getting confused. This one wasn't particular. Well, this one was at least 10 metres tall or something when we moved in, darling. It was the one. It was the other one down the end there that was the tiny one.
Let me show you now my leeks, or our leeks, because they are very tender, but I'm very keen to make use of them. So we will be picking some today. And here they are. This is an entire row of leeks. There are a few more over here. They're not quite ready yet. They will not be ready until later in the season. But I'm very keen to make use of them today. And also I know that they're going to be really tender. So I'm going to be taking this bunch of 3 here. I'll just pull them off the ground. And if you look, they're not very big, but there's plenty for me in terms of what I need to do, the added flavor, the earthy flavor that I'm looking for in today's dish. So I'll finish collecting the rest of my borlotti beans, and I'll see you indoors. See you later. And of course you're not limited to just fresh beans to make this recipe. You can also use the dry ones, but do ensure that you soak them for at the very least 8 to 10 hours. Follow the instructions in the packaging, because every type of bean requires a different treatment in terms of how long you soak them for. Very important though. And equally well, you're not limited to just using borlotti beans. I'm using borlotti beans because that is what I've got in the garden, and I mentioned earlier that I like the beautiful shading and color. Look at this one here, for example, beautiful red and so on. But you can use kidney beans, pinto beans, cannellini beans, or a combination of different types of beans. They will all taste beautiful. These are also from our garden. Just wanted to show you, and we have actually dried them already, and they're ready for winter. So once they dry, they shrink in size, and then they can be stored away, and we will need to obviously soak those overnight for 8 to 10 hours before we use them. So you've got plenty of choices. And I'm ready to start cooking the beans. I've given them a good wash and also checked them for some uninvited little guests, like the odd worm and so on. But also, can you see occasionally you get these little brown ones? I will remove those because they're not very good. There's a couple here. And do ensure that if you do use the dry beans, that you change the water a couple of times, and also before you start cooking them, give them another rinse. The more you wash them, the better. The reason why I'm removing these little brown ones is because I don't think they're going to taste very nice, so I'll get rid of them. Bay leaf, and I will top them up with cold water, otherwise they will split if I use hot water. And I'm going to go about an inch above the top of my beans. And I'll turn the temperature on maximum, and I'll wait until they start boiling, and then I'll turn it down onto medium, and they will require about 20 to 25 minutes from that point on. If you're using dry beans, they might require a little bit longer, but in any case, make sure that you test them and they're totally cooked. And here they are, they're beginning to boil, so I'll turn them down as I said, and I'll place the lid on so that they cook a little bit faster. Before I continue, I nearly forgot to turn my Tortellino sign on, so I'll do that now. There it goes. It's a bit bright as usual, so I'll turn it down and we can carry on, otherwise I'll get in trouble. Now, I'm pleased to say that most of the vegetables I will be using today are from our garden. The only exception is going to be a few tomatoes. So you saw me picking a few leeks earlier. These are some sweet little carrots and celery, also from our garden. And this is the first time I'm using one of our onions from the garden, which Julie has dried, and garlic. You'll be familiar with garlic from our garden by now. So I'll start cleaning them up, but I'll make sure that everything is cut fairly fine, by the way. But one thing I wanted to show you is just the leeks. So I've given them a good clean, of course. I'll remove this as I don't need it. And I've noticed that lots of people waste a lot of the leek, and it's not necessary. What I'll do, especially with these ones, which are really tender, I'll go quite high in terms of the leek, as far as somewhere like here. And this can go in my compost bin. And here, if you see, I just remove the top leaves, and they're perfectly okay. You might want to check to make sure that there are any little creatures in there, but do not go too low with the leeks, because actually they taste absolutely fine. And I did say that I want this dish to be nice and earthy, and that is exactly what I will get with these leeks. But as I said, I will be chopping everything nice and small, so I'll start with the leeks. A lot of Italian dishes require a soffritto, and this is what I'm doing next, using my vegetables. So I'll start with a little olive oil at the bottom of a frying pan, which is on medium at the moment. And generally the basic soffritto consists of celery, carrots and onion. But this is a little bit of a super soffritto, because I'm enhancing it by adding 3 small cloves of garlic, skin included, but I've crushed them, and the leek, which you've seen me already chopping. So as I said before, everything is chopped in small pieces, so I'll add everything together. I'm not staggering anything, everything can go in together. And of course, being that everything is chopped in very similar size, it's perfectly okay to add everything together. And I will turn them down a little bit more, as I want them to cook very slowly, and I don't want them to turn brown either. I want those autumn flavors to be locked in all together. And this is the only item which I have purchased from the supermarket, some plum tomatoes, a good handful. And I'm chopping them in half so that they will be releasing their juices, and of course you can replace them with a half a tin of tomatoes. If, like me, you're making a meat eaters version, I would strongly recommend that you add pork products. These are Calabrian hot sausages. I've chosen to go for hot because of the warmth of the dish, and I mentioned to you before the colors and everything else, they reflect autumn. But if you look, I've actually retained the skin on one sausage, but I've peeled the skin from another. So that will be the case where I've got nice chunky pieces of sausages in one hand, and then this one will be obviously all very small, and it will be diluted in terms of flavor across everything else. These are 3 rashers of smoked bacon. You can of course also use unsmoked bacon, and any type of bacon will be fine. And I'm using smoked because again, the autumn flavor or smokiness, I think it is beautiful. And of course, if you're vegetarian, you can use fake bacon, I think it's called faken, or indeed vegetarian sausages, or if you like, just drop the meat altogether. There's plenty going on for you to appreciate that beautiful flavor I'm talking about. So my soffritto has been sizzling for a good 5 minutes on a low temperature, and I can add all of my meat next. And I'll turn the temperature up so that the sausages and the bacon start releasing their fat. And I'll go and find the sausages where I have removed the skin, and I'll start crunching it so that it spreads across everything. The combination of the sausages and the bacon release the most amazing flavor. They've been cooking now for about 5 minutes. Time to add half a glass of dry white wine. And I'm making sure that I've got a good amount of heat underneath so that all of the alcohol from the wine evaporates. Okay, we are there. So tomato puree, a good tablespoon equivalent, in it goes, followed by the chopped tomatoes. And I'll go ahead and mix everything together once again, but I'm going to add a pinch of salt and also some pepper, quantities to taste as always. Do ensure that you are a little bit careful with salt, because the spiciness of the sausages, and also the sausages are quite salty, so do not go over the top. And my beans are cooked. Here they are. I'll just move them over here if I get my little rack so I don't burn my wood. And there's still obviously all of the water there. And I'll turn this down so you can hear me. And I'll start moving them to my pan with everything else. And do not worry if you're taking some water with you. That is perfectly okay, because actually that is where the real flavor lays. As it happens, I'm going to add a couple of little ladles to my sauce. Maybe I'll make it 3, and this water here, I'll keep it, I'll top it up with more hot water, and that is where I'll be cooking the pasta, because that's where the real flavor lays. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and mix everything together to ensure that the beans absorb the flavor from everything else, and likewise everything else absorb the flavor from the beans. And time to make some bechamel sauce. 20 grams of plain flour. I'm going to add 200 milliliters of milk. This is semi-skimmed, but of course you can also use skimmed or whole milk, entirely up to you. Only a very tiny little pinch of salt, as everything else is quite salty, and also nutmeg. It is very typical to add nutmeg in bechamel sauce, but you do not have to if you don't like it. But I do, and I'm going to add a good little pinch, maybe a little bit more. Hob is on high, I'll move it on and I'll start mixing it immediately, otherwise it will stick to the pan. And I'll continue mixing it until it becomes lovely and creamy. And stay on top of it, as in no time at all you'll get there, because it's only a small amount of milk. So this is done, and look, can you see how beautiful and creamy it is? Ricotta, 250 grams, and I'm going to add the entire tub to my bechamel sauce. And I'll mix it in, and I'll get a beautiful ricotta and bechamel sauce. Let's have a little taste to see what it's like. And it's really delicious. The flavor from the nutmeg is very earthy, and that undistinguished taste from the ricotta is absolutely beautiful. So this is ready, and it can go on one side for later. And time to cook my pasta. As I mentioned before, I'm using the same stock I used for the beans, and I'll top it up with some water which I've just boiled. And today I will be using rigatoni for pasta. Any short pasta is very good, but I love rigatoni, it's one of my favorites. Here it is. So I'm going to add it in, and I'm actually making more than what we need, as I will freeze this. Yes, you can freeze it once has cooled down. And the cooking time, this requires generally for it to be completely cooked anything between 10 to 12 minutes. So read the packaging of your pasta, and then half it. So I will be cooking this for 6 minutes. I do not want it to be totally cooked. That's why I've made my sauce fairly brothy, because it will finish cooking in the oven, and the pasta will also absorb some of the flavor from my mix. So do ensure that you do not cook it to the end, because otherwise it will become a little bit gluey also. Of course you can also use fresh pasta, and nowadays you can buy rigatoni in a fresh version, or any type of fresh pasta. If you were to use fresh pasta, or indeed fresh lasagna for example, you can make a lasagna with this. You do not need to pre-cook it, only if you're using the hard durum pasta, that is. So I'll wait 6 minutes, and then I'll show you what to do next, and we are very close to getting the dish complete in terms of what it looks like before it goes in the oven. And here is my pasta. I'll place it inside a glass bowl, remove the bay leaf if like me you left it in there. And I'll start by applying some Parmigiano. You can also use pecorino or any Italian cheese that you've got in the fridge, hard Italian cheese. Or if you like, you can even grate some cheddar if you prefer. That's that. I'll go in now with my spoon and mix it in to ensure that the Parmigiano is absorbed by the pasta. And I'll measure about half of my mixture and add it in, and I'll mix it together once again. Oh my god, the smell coming up is just unbelievable. It's something you need to try. So make sure that your oven dish is big enough, and I'm gonna pour half of my pasta, enough to cover the base of my oven dish. This is Primo Sale cheese, which is a typical Sicilian cheese, but you can use any cheese you like. You can even use mozzarella if you like. Make sure that it melts nicely though. And I'm randomly applying a few blobs of my ricotta and bechamel sauce. Yes, you figured it. This is a very cheesy dish. Followed by the rest of my beans. spread it evenly so that they cover the entire surface. And with the rest of the pasta here, before I mix it, I'm going to add some rosemary in here, like this. Then the rest of my ricotta and the bechamel sauce can go on top of my pasta like this. And I'll mix it together until everything is totally combined, and I'll bring my oven dish back here and I'll pour it in just like this. I'll spread it evenly once again, and I'll go back with some more of my primosale or provolone, whatever cheese you've got available, or as I said, mozzarella, and I'll put it on top there. I think I will also add a last sprinkle of parmigiano at the very top, like this. And it's ready to go in the oven, just as it is. You do not need to cover it up. Temperature wise, if it's fan assisted like mine, 170. Otherwise, if it's a normal conventional oven, up it by 20 degrees to 190. 20 to 25 minutes. I'll see you then. And here it is, has been sitting in there for about 10 minutes cooling down. For the sake of disclosure and transparency, I would not have any other way. I forgot to mention, before I placed it in the oven, I added half a mug of cooking water from the pasta on the sides against the edges, so that it would not dry too much. And sorry, I forgot to mention it earlier, but I'm mentioning it now. And if you look, has all been absorbed by the pasta. So it's quite an important step to ensure that it doesn't dry too much. And let it rest for about 10 minutes, so that gives a chance for it to cool down and give your your tasting buds the opportunity to test it properly. So I'm going to taste it next. So I'm going to show you what it looks like here in the middle. Look, see the beautiful ricotta and the beautiful beans are all in there. So I'll just tuck in and I'll show you. But I'll make sure that I'm not going to make a little pig of myself, as I normally do. Difficult. And I'll keep it relatively small. I genuinely feel guilty that I cannot share this with you. It's so delicious. On the other hand, I'm sharing the recipe. Honestly, it's just to die for, regardless if it's a vegetarian version or not. I've done it without the sausage in the past. And if you do not have access to the Calabrian sausages, you can always ask your butcher, but if you want to save some money, you could actually add some chili flakes or some chili oil, or both, depends how brave you feel, and you will get a very similar outcome. Honestly, it's to die for. It's so delicious. I'm going to tuck in very soon. Julie's waiting indoors, and we're going to eat. Ciao, buon appetito. Thank you for watching.